Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. Now, the YouTube app has been a little buggy recently, causing blank spots in my videos to occur. This is not my doing, this is YouTube. I don't like blank spots because that chases people away. If you do experience this, just refresh the page and you should be able to get the content. I do apologize on YouTube's behalf. They could do that, but you know, they're a small indie company and can't afford team members to do this to you. Anyways, on to the story. The Aggression Plague by MostlyWicked. It was a fine, warm evening when my elders sprung an unexpected question on me. We were sitting on the porch under the black sky when he raised all four eye stalks and asked the question,
Dad, what's anger?
An instinctual wave of fear passed through me, but I managed to control it, I think, except for the slight quiver of my secondary eye stalks that I hoped didn't give me away. It's important to show the little ones that adults are in control, or so my second and third female clustermates keep telling me.
Where did you hear that word, son? From Karis at school,
Lazaro, my son, said, curling his radiator fins shyly.
She says that her dad says that there used to be these tiny dots of light in the sky until the anger come.
I sighed, blowing out a few bubbles of mucus through my breathing hole. Kiris, I think, was the small model one that Lazaro befriended recently. The one that had unusually large parent cluster of 18 parents. Some people don't have any modesty or sense of tradition. My cluster was 8. And that was as it should be. And no matter what anyone said, I was not jealous of anyone's mating cluster's size. I'll need to take note and track down which of her 9 fathers told her this reckless story, and have a frank talk with him. These kids were only 9 pulses old. They weren't ready for learning this stuff. I had a brief internal debate with myself, but I knew the damage was already done. Lazaro learned about anger. If he didn't hear the full story from me now, he'd just hear the half-truth later from somewhere else until he was so scared that he wouldn't be able to sleep. As a historian, I was at a unique position to control how my child is exposed to this information. And knowing what I know, some of the concepts involved are really hard to wrap your neural center around. I could probably do a much better job of it than the teachers at school, even if I do teach it a couple pulses earlier than the usual age. I just hoped that my clustermates were okay with it. We had a mating frenzy scheduled for tomorrow, and I really didn't want to cancel it because of a stupid spat. Especially Kutra, my youngest, third male mate, was as temperamental as he was sweet, and he might object to me exposing our son to such adult topics. If he cancels over this, I'll be upset. I was immensely stressed out from the cataloging project at the library. I needed that frenzy. But my son was more important, and I truly believed that he would be better off hearing the spooky stuff directly from me at this point. Oh well, here goes nothing.
Let's take a walk,
I said, standing up.
But Dad, what if it rains?
It's fine. I have a friend in HAB engineering. He always warns me in advance on rainy days. It won't rain today. I helped Laszlo up, and we took a leisurely stroll amongst the trees and bushes. Our housing unit was located on the outskirts of the habitation dome, where the vegetation was particularly dense. The aroma of blooming flowers was especially strong and pleasant. Too bad the mood had to be ruined tonight. Time stretched on as we paced in silence and darkness. As we got further into the outskirts, the lights of the central settlement became dim orbs amongst the trees, barely illuminating the way. You know how we feel different emotions, I finally asked, like joy, sadness, fear, contentment. Laszlo gestured assent, and I smiled, bobbing my radiator fins. There are other emotions than the ones you know, emotions that can't be experienced by Polarians at all. Our Polarian neural centers are just not wired properly to even comprehend them, much less experience them.
Oh, I know.
His secondary eye stalks rolled with excitement.
Like the Nostani. Before they mate, they butt their horns against each other because they're feeling some emotion that we can't feel.
Well, where are you hearing this stuff? Is it Curris with her stories again? I wrinkled my radiator fins in a frown. It's impolite to talk about mating openly, especially for someone as young as you.
Sorry, Dad.
It's fine. Just keep that vocal organ in check. Anyways, where was I? Oh, emotions. Well, the Nostani example is not a bad one. They have an instinct that causes them to push against each other when some of their positions are threatened, as well as a few other cases. It's like a game. Whoever pushes the strongest wins to get the, Laszlo giggled. Anyway, the Polarians don't have an equivalent instinct. But there are some other species out there with even stranger instincts and emotions. And one of those emotions is what scientists call the ira motus, or in a more casual parlance, anger. I could see that I had his attention. My main stalks were almost useless now, that we were so far from the lights of the settlement. But my secondary stalks detected heat of excitement flashing in Laszlo's face.
So anger is an alien emotion? Well, what does it have to do with the lights in the sky?
Do you see anything at all with your main eye stalks now, son?
No, Dad.
My abrupt change of subject had recently caught him off guard.
I was navigating by my heat stalks the last few micropulses.
Good, look up then. Your main eye stalk should be adjusted enough to the dark to see the smudge. We both looked up, and after a few further moments of adjustment, I could see the smudge. The faintest circular light, curiously cloud-like, stretching across the entire sky. It was thickest at the center, with arms trailing away in spirals, like some exotic seaborne creature.
Ah, I see it.
Good. It's difficult to catch a line without dome sky, but even harder to find a dark spot to see it clearly. We're lucky today.
No, does it have anything to do with anger?
Oh, aren't you clever today? I smiled. Not directly, but we'll get there. Look back the way we came. I heard a faint creak of his eye stalks moving, then moving back to look up.
Hey, I can no longer see the smudge.
It's fine, your eyes just lost their night vision because you looked at the settlement lights. Give it a micropulse to adjust again. The more important thing is, did you see how weak the lights of the settlement were?
Yeah, I can barely see them from here.
Right, that smudge is like that too. We are very far away from it, unimaginably far, but the closer you get to it, the brighter it'll seem. A few moments of silence.
Ah, Eureka! Lights in the sky, like Curris said.
Yes, originally all of our ancestors lived inside the smudge, among balls of light and heat that we call stars. I'll teach you the particulars some other time, because we want to talk about anger and other alien emotions right now. Suffice to say that Polarians, Nostani, and all the other species of the Great Friendship originally came from right there. I pointed with my appendage up.
Wow.
Yes, give you some food for thought, does it?
But, how come we no longer live there now?
Ah, that's where the anger comes in. You see, we historians classify all alien species into 3 categories according to their ability to experience anger and other emotions of its type, such as hate. A1 races are the vast majority. We are an A1 race too, incapable of comprehending anger. Following so far?
Sure, Dad, but what does it have to do with the smudge?
I'm getting there. Be patient. A2 races are rare. The Nostani and the Arcabus are the only 2 in the Friendship, compared to the almost 100 A1 races. They can feel some emotions that are adjacent to anger, but much weaker. Pushing their horns against each other is an example of this. And then there are the A3 races, the ones that feel anger fully.
Dad, I don't understand anything. What's anger to begin with? Why is that emotion so important? Why classify aliens by whether they can experience it? And why does pushing horns a weaker form of anger? I don't get it.
Sorry, I bobbed my radiator fins. You're right, I'm jumping ahead of myself. This was going to be one of the tough parts. Anger is an incredibly alien emotion that leads to incredibly irrational behavior. After years of study, I could somewhat get it. as much as anyone can understand something he can't ever experience. But explaining this concisely yet clearly was going to be a challenge. Imagine that you really wanted to get a new, shining computer for school. One with a great processor power and pretty ornaments.
I do! Can I have one?
We'll talk about that with your other parents when we get back. Anyways, that's not the point. Imagine that you bring it to school, and without saying anything, Kuris comes up, takes it, and walks away with it, and you never see it again.
Oh, what? That would just be ludicrously impolite. Why would she do that?
She never would, but just imagine that she does it anyway, for some unknown reason. How would you feel about that?
Sad, of course. Maybe I would be a bit worried for Kuris's mental state.
And what would your sadness drive you to do?
I guess that I'd go and talk to her about it. Ask her why she did it, because she must have had a reason.
And if she refuses to tell you, how would you feel then? And what would you do?
Even more sad, obviously. I'd ask for my computer back.
And if she refuses?
If she... What? I don't know. I'll be incredibly sad, full of all the sadness under the dome. I'll go and ask you for a new computer.
That's it?
Well, yes. If she won't give it back and won't tell me why, what can I do? I'll need a computer, obviously.
Sure. But would you remain her friend?
Huh?
Laszlo frowned.
What does her friendship have to do with anything?
She did take away your computer in this hypothetical example.
Sure, but what would stopping our friendship solve? She would be even less willing to explain anything if she wasn't my friend, and that won't prevent her from taking my computer again in the future, right? And then I'll lose the other benefits of the friendship for nothing. There's no reason to stop.
Yes, except if you were capable of experiencing anger. That's not the thought process that would occur to you. I kept one secondary eye stalk on the kid as I talked, and I could see the confusion my last statement brought on. To us Paularians, a radically different approach to problem solving is barely imaginable. But I knew better than to think our way of thinking was the only one. I wished to the friendship that I didn't, but I knew. Now I guess there's no way around it. It's time to explain exactly what anger is, now, or at least try. I sighed. The bubbles of mucus expelled by my sigh were too thin from dread, with an almost no viscosity to them at all. Here goes nothing. Remember a pulse ago when a Polarian fell into an agricultural vat and was suffocated before they could be rescued?
Yes, I try not to think about it, such things. Dad, accidents are horrible.
You are completely correct. But what's even more horrible is intentional accidents.
That doesn't make any sense. An accident can't be intentional. It's in the definition of the word.
My son was smart for his age, that's for certain, but this very intelligence was working against his understanding right now. You can't really use intelligence to understand an unintelligent concept. Then what if an accident was brought on not by intention and clumsiness like it did in reality, but by some other creature pushing them into a vat? A sapient creature, hypothetically speaking, of course.
Why would they do that?
A Polarian never would, of course, and so would no species of the friendship. But, and I think it over very carefully since that kind of thinking is very alien to us, technically, a Polarian can benefit from another Polarian perishing. If, to go back to our earliest example, Kuris perished after taking away your computer, you could go over to her belongings and get it back. And they won't be there to hide it from you, to run away, or to convince you not to do it. Long micropulses passed, while my son's radiator fins were wrinkled in deep thought. What I was mostly thinking about is the death of innocence. What was I doing here anyways? Speaking with my son about his friends dying, about monsters prowling inside the smudge. Only about 1 in 10 Polarians had the mental flexibility to really comprehend what aggression, anger, and murder even were. Even after pulses of study and rigorous explanation, I hoped that my son would be one of the 9 in 10. He didn't need to know. Even though I'm not one teaching him all of this, he would be better off living a happy life of ignorance. even if it did affect his odds of survival negatively should he ever encounter an A3er, perish the thought. In a sense, I was murdering his innocence, worsening his mental health for a technical benefit of keeping my own progeny safe. Was that all that was different from the horrors I was teaching Lazro about? Maybe we Polarians weren't as different from A3 races as we'd like to think.
Oh, I know,
Lazro said eventually, jarring me out of my gloomy thoughts.
Like, there are species of predators that would consume others for food, right? We learned about them just the other day in biology class. Although, I couldn't imagine anyone sentient wanting to do so.
Close enough, son. Not quite there, but close. Creating an intentional accident can also be the result of anger. Anger would be an emotion that drove you to want to arrange intentional harm on another being, attacking them like a predator would. But not out of anger, no. They'll attack for no good reason at all other than this alien emotion causing them to do so.
Yeah, it's getting complicated. I don't think I understand.
Oh, gets even more complicated. Some A3 races can learn to arrange accidents on huge scales. You saw some of our friends, the Lipik, walking around our habitation zone. They're good engineers, the Lipik. Anyway, if you look closely, some of them have 3 upper appendages instead of 2. That is because early on in their species history, a huge orbital power plant exploded as a result of an engineering error, irradiating most of their home planet. A planet is like a huge habitat. I'll explain in detail later, and causing horrific genetic mutations. Despite the best efforts of genetic engineers, some of these mutations persist in their gene pool even today. Accidents on that scale can also be arranged intentionally. Power plants can be exploded on purpose. Meteors can be intentionally diverted to impact planets. All kinds of horrors, son, but not to dwell on it too much, actually.
Yeah, it's fine. I lost you ages ago. I can't think about it even if I wanted to. I didn't expect this anger business to be that complicated. But I think I can kind of understand if I imagine all the A3 races to be like predators that can think and build stuff.
Okay, sure, we can call the A3 races predators if that makes it easier for you to comprehend.
But, why are we no longer in the smudge? Is it because of the predators? They must be very rare. If A1 species are the most common and A2 species are much rarer than...
You're a clever boy, Lazro. But that's not quite true. In reality, A3 races are the most common race by a huge margin. Natural selection favors anger and hate immensely. Almost all sapient species in the universe are A3. The friendship with its A1 and A2 races is a vanishingly small minority. To my chagrin, my son's eye stalks shrunk in horror. Oh, don't worry, son, the universe is not teeming with A3 species waiting to eat you. They all inevitably destroy each other. Either that, or they put their energies inward and never reach the stars, as their alien emotions drive them to make havoc on their own worlds without regard for anything without. For thousands of pulses, the civilizations of friendship thought that just as surely as most species end up in the A3 category, likewise all A3 species are doomed to perish by their own hands, one way or another, without getting out of the prison of their own worlds. Natural selection dictated a natural order. The galactic minority becomes the majority of spacefarers.
But they were proven wrong, have they?
I hated how small my son's voice sounded, but there was no going back. Yes, they have. We don't know how it happened, but at one point, quite unexpectedly, we encountered a young race called humans. You wouldn't notice anything unordinary by just looking at them. 2 legs, 2 upper appendages, and a vertical body plan with a head right on top, and fur in varying lengths topping their head. Nothing remarkable, really. There are plenty of friendship races, much stranger than the humans appeared to be. But pretty quickly we figured out that they were different, and, in their essence, more alien than anything we've ever encountered. They were most definitely, and without any shadow of a doubt, a full-fledged, almost perfect example of a straight-out A3 race. Lazro was mesmerized.
And they had starships?
Yes, their technology was a bit cruder than friendship standard, but generally comparable.
But why? Why didn't they eat each other on their own planet?
Nobody knows. Some speculate that an unknown A1 race gave them the technology to escape their home system, and they became too scattered to destroy themselves completely. Others think that humans are capable of suppressing their violent emotions, either biologically or by social engineering, for long enough stretches of time to develop spaceship technology on their own.
All right, and they drove us out of the smudge. Did they, want to eat us? With intentional accidents?
Not really, no, but they were mostly nice at first. Some of the friendship races guessed what was coming, though. The Fulcra reacted poorly to the humans' existence. They constructed an immense mothership in record time, 20 times the size of one of our habitats. They stripped several planets of all of their ore to do so, then placed their entire race into cryogenic suspension and ran out of the smudge on their own. The Pits, another friendship race, revealed a startling new technology they never told us about. They developed powerful energy shields that could sustain themselves by feeding off ambient energy. They created many habitats like ours, relocated their race into them, encased them in these shields, and dove into the photosphere of their world's sun, becoming effectively unreachable, cloistering themselves off of the universe at large.
What are suns?
Right, I keep forgetting you don't know any of this stuff. Don't they teach it at school anyway? Suffice to say that these two races dropped out of the friendship entirely to escape the presence of humans. We were not as smart as those two and had to learn the lesson the hard way.
But you said that the humans were not trying to eat us.
Not really. We were apprehensive at first, but they seemed pretty fine for an A3 species, as long as you didn't communicate with them for more than a few mini-pulses at a time. When eventually their alien emotions started shining through in a way they talked, they even wanted to join the friendship. Once they learned about its existence, they offered us trade, technology, works of art and philosophy, everything expected of a friendship member races, really. But the thing about anger is that it's just like any other emotion. One doesn't feel it all the time, just some of it. And that was more than enough to cause us immense harm. It started when some independent human ships kept raiding friendship ships for resources. Yes, it's one of those hard-to-get things. A sapient species treating another sapient like a resource, like ore to be mined or a fruit to be picked from a tree. But that's exactly what they did. Piracy, the humans called it. Once we expressed our horror and asked them to stop. Nothing we can do about it but increase patrols, they said. I tried not to think too hard just then on what happened when one of the human patrols caught up to the pirates and focused on the story. We tried putting bigger engines on our ships so that we could run way faster, but it helped only some of the time. People were dying out there, dying to the predations of an A3 race.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's not all. Later their government fractured, and suddenly the smudge was like a ball of flame. Rebels and loyalists, they were causing intentional damage to each other by the millions, like that huge accident that I was telling you about, but on purpose. In most cases they didn't attack our worlds directly, although there were some isolated incidents. All four of my eye stalks shuddered for a moment. But just the spillover was more than enough to cause immense harm to us and the other friendship races. The inevitable self-destruction prophesied by natural selection had begun, on a larger scale than anything seen before, and we were swept along with it. Their anger and aggression were spreading like a plague that consumed anything it touched, and we couldn't put a stop to it by talking to them, although we tried. Oh, how we tried. By that point, some of the others already started building their fleets of habitation ships, and we quickly followed suit. That's how we got to be here, outside of the smudge. And that's why the humans' anger at each other, sometimes at us, who knows, maybe even at the universe at large, drove us out of the smudge, and we no longer see its balls of light, its stars, in our dome's sky.
Thanks for explaining, Dad. But all I understood from that is that there are some very scary aliens in that smudge.
That's good enough a lesson, son. You don't really need to understand anything more. It's for the best. Now let's head back home. You have school tomorrow. End of story. I would just quickly like to thank the T5 peeps: Dragon Soup, Cold War Boomerwaffen, Severin Cerberus, Red Panda 121, Leslie 517, Bushmaster 177, Caspar Arnholtz, Cam Maxwell, Sans the Skeleton, Lightjock, Dragzoon WRE, and Lord Azrakal. Thank you very much.